Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effin' Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors that goes behind the scenes with some of the most interesting characters in the Australian franchise sector. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, with my co-host, John Sully, and today we're speaking with Dave Milne, co-founder of Concept 8, Noodle Box to start with, but Concept 8 now.
Dave, tell us your fucking story.
Okay, John.
Yes.
It's your franchising story, Dave. So franchising story. So tell us your franchising story. So we'll go right back, mate. So, where'd you grow up as a kid? Tell us a little bit about the story there.
So I grew up in North Ringwood, and lived a great life out there in my junior years. We had a lot of association with that area because my family had been out there for over 100 years and had started farming out there and had orchards and those sorts of things. And also we had the local Milne's general store, which was like the original little local produce store there. Went to the same primary school as my grandmother was the first student at, so we had a very sort of comfortable, sort of social sort of family feel out that way. All our family was out there, so yeah.
The family business. My family business was very similar. And the supermarket side, my grandfather had the supermarket down the road from your grandfather in Ringwood, and so working. So you growing up, did you work in the shop as a kid, and was it sort of past?
No, it was a bit early for me. Yeah. But I do remember. I do have some memories of when the big extension happened, and we. Built a much bigger centre, going there as a sort of 5-6 year old, being on the roof with the builders, with Dad, getting shown around, trying to lay a brick and all that sort of stuff. I remember all those things. But as far as working in the shop,
you weren't packing shelves.
I wasn't packing shelves. No, not as a 7-year-old.
I was child labour. Packing the shop, the bags at the front.
Dave, did you ever egg their supermarket?
No. I think that was a little bit later on. I might have been hired to do. No, we didn't.
It wasn't the Milnes and the McFarlanes, the McCoys and the.
Mine. And back then, so primary school days, growing up in the outer suburbs, I imagine playing sports, just getting around. What sort of things were you interested in as a kid?
I was very sports orientated as a kid, and I loved a bit of competition. And I started racing a BMX bike when I was 7, and sort of continued to do that until I was sort of 16, 17. And I was very passionate about that and the community that I had there, as well as outside with school and school sports and things like that. So for me, the community thing was really evolved around sport. It was just, I think it was something that kept me happy with school and happy in those sort of situations, yeah.
Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were a kid? Like, was there something that...
I don't know if I had a particular thing, but I always felt like I wanted to do something for myself, and when I was old enough to sort of realise that I had to have a career. And I definitely wasn't overly focused as a student. I wasn't a sponge at school. Yeah. I was more, keen to know what the next adventure was, rather than, learning, absorbing in that way. So,
John, you can relate to that, mate.
I saw my sister sent me a photo of a tattoo. I have to tell you this very quickly. And the Akadaka ACDC with the lightning bolt. And
right.
It's
on her?
No, not yet. And it was Highway to Hell.
Right.
And it's, instead of it saying ACDC, it said ADHD. Had the thing in the middle, and it said Highway to Look Squirrel. That basically sums me up. So I can understand completely where you're coming from.
So when you finished school, did you follow the path into university, or was business, or where did you finish? Where'd you go when you finished school?
Yeah, so when I finished school, I went and got a job straight away with I guess there's a few people in your life that have an impact and sort of push you in a direction a little bit. But I got a job after school which was also a part-time job while I was at school, but I went and worked full-time for a guy called Costa Skoufos, who was a clothing guy, and I worked in his shop and then worked at Calibre Clothing as well in town, and just, you know, sort of just getting experience of earning some money. Wanted to sort of take a bit of time out from what I was doing, and then I started back at uni doing marketing, and I just couldn't get into it. I just, you know, for some reason. And Dad had always said to me growing up, you know, ever since I was probably about 12, my memory of, you know, saying to Dad, you know, I'm going to leave school early, or I want to leave school. Dad would be like, yeah, no problem, work for yourself. You know, that was his attitude, you know, always work for yourself.
Was he in the supermarket as well?
He was in the supermarket, family business,
Yeah, right.
And so I never had pressure to stay at school, I guess, but I did. And then when I left, I didn't really have any fast aspirations to go back in and study, but I ended up going back. But again, I found it very hard to sort of be a sponge and someone that wanted to sort of learn in that way. But always was fascinated with what Dad was doing and running his own business, and watching what, you know, he did, and diversifying out of just running supermarkets into commercial property and building things and farming and all of that sort of thing. So I was really keen to sort of follow in those footsteps, I guess, from a passion point of view, but without sort of pinpointing actually what that was going to be.
Yeah. And was your mum involved was your mum around, or?
No, Mum was involved, but my parents split when I was 7, but we lived very close to each other still, in the sense of everyone was still in the same suburb.
Yeah, right.
But Mum was an opera singer for the ABC, and she was down that sort of path, you know, and Dad was just completely the opposite. And
which way did you go? Did you?
Well, I can sing you a few bars, and I think you'll guess. But it was, but yeah, it's it was, you know, very, you know, two very different things.
Very,
but I think, you know, Mum was pretty supportive when they were together, in a sense. When talking about the very early days, to both of them, they were, you know, it was always, you know, it was a team of Mum working in the family business and helping out and those sorts of things. So she was involved at that point.
And your siblings as well? So you got a sister?
I've got a sister, Larissa, who's 4 years older. She now sits on the board at Concept 8.
So she's in the business now. Was she in the business back in the work at all with your dad, or not?
No, she came into the Noodle Box business years ago. Okay. Back when we only had about 4 stores, and we were putting some extra money together with family to grow. So she came in at that point and had a small share, and then she sold out when Dad came back in. But now, unfortunately, Dad passed away a couple of years ago, and Larissa's taken over Dad's role in the business and sitting on the board, and she's really stepped into it nicely, actually, and fit into the dynamics really well with the family. So
And so your early working for other people and stuff, what sort of things did you get out of? Did you learn some great skills as thinking about for business in those early days? Or?
Yeah, I think one of the things I got from Costa, to be honest, was he really loved what he did, and I loved watching him be good at what he was doing, because he just really enjoyed it. And also the thing that I liked too was he had a fantastic way of working with people, and he just built a really good network around himself. And then when I went into work at Calibre into South Yarra, I just met more and more people, and obviously, because when I was at school, getting out of North Ringwood State School, out of Norwood High School, and going into Trinity Grammar in town, I met a whole new group of people and a whole different dynamic. And the school environment was a different environment. It was much more around being involved in the school a lot more, and school sport and all of those sorts of things. So Yeah.
How long did the marketing last for? Did you finish?
I was probably I was only there for about 4 months, and
4
then
months.
and then gave it a really good crack, and then, and then
It's probably when you sobered up after the start.
yeah.
Well,
But I had a friend of mine who was heading overseas, and he convinced me to go with him, and that was a massive game changer for me.
Yep.
Was heading away.
So you so backpacking, no money, just walking jobs.
Pretty much sums up the start of it all. Yeah.
Working in London.
Working in London. Did a stint over there. Was extremely fortunate. I was introduced to a guy called Colin Daniels, he's now the CEO of South by Southwest, actually. He was working for Mushroom Records at the time, and Colin and I met, got along really, really well, and he just opened up a whole world for me over there, work-wise. Got me on a couple of tours with different bands and a couple of Aussie bands, and just met such a diverse group of people. And again, for me, just seeing people just do extraordinary things, and things that I just, were way out of my realm of, even thought that I could come across some of these guys.
But what were you doing? It was like a roadie or something?
Yeah,
like
I was just doing roadie stuff and working on tours, just doing the, whatever needed to be done. I think one of the funnest ones I went on was away with Jimmy Barnes, and was away with him for a couple of months doing a lot of Europe, Germany, those Central Europe stuff.
Anyone ever heard of Jimmy Barnes?
It was amazing. I mean, I was only 19, 20 at the time, or probably 20, yeah. And so it was just a real eye opener. And again, seeing just gave me confidence that you can just go for things and see what happens.
That's awesome.
Which was great.
And so you've you at uni you've just learned to party and haven't learned much else. You've travelled. Now you've come back to Australian hospitality. Thought pubs, music, bring all that together. So was it?
Can I just say, I don't think we should necessarily get off the Jimmy Barnes tour.
Go back.
Go on. Sorry.
So you went. Was after coming back to Australia, was hospitality and pubs, nightclubs? You got into that. It was around the same time.
Well, it was like one thing that I started to really gravitate to when I was away. I started to take a real interest in food and looking at food concepts. And one thing that sort of sparked my interest initially was I saw Wagamama's had just opened up in London, down in a basement near Soho, and it was like the biggest thing that it was sort of happening in food over there at the time. And we used to go and eat there, and it was pretty cheap. And so that sort of triggered me a little bit, and I started to, then when I was travelling around Europe, I started to look at different things, and I started to take an interest in the brand and how people were presenting food and doing those sorts of things. So that's kind of where my interest in food began, I think, in hospitality.
Were they ahead of us at the time, you think, in Europe?
I think so, but... Yeah, I think so, but I didn't have an interest in it in Australia to sort of take enough notice as to how far down the track we were either. And when I talk to people about, when they were younger, eating out with their families in restaurants and things, I think there was a food scene still in Australia, but I just probably wasn't aware of it, given I'd spent most of my time out in North Ringwood, and we didn't have a lot of that sort of exposure out that way. In my teens and things like that.
So how old are you? So you're 20s. How old are you now?
I'm 50.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah.
So because that was where Pret a Manger, when what was...
Pret a Manger, I think, started in about 94, was it? 92?
Yeah,
94?
when, what was it? Jacob was over there.
Spencer.
So, and he was running that. It just, from the way he described it, the store, and the way it was run, it was really cool and ahead of its time. Like the way they dealt with people, I think, is probably what I'm getting at. So it's interesting to see where it was at.
So we were, I mean, one of the things that sort of, from a Noodle Box perspective, was I ended up doing a couple of festival gigs out in Denmark, in Copenhagen, that Mushroom had put on, and again, I was just doing, the base level running and coffee and all the rest of it for everyone and whatever, but we were eating out of the noodle boxes. the packaging. And they had like a market there, a food market on the weekends, and you could get all different types of cuisine in the boxes. And then, seeing the Seinfeld thing and doing all that. So when I got back to Australia to come back to see family, and I was planning on going back, I came back and then I started to think about, well, maybe something with these boxes. And so I had a friend of mine send me out a box of them. And I had them sitting in my room for about 6 months, and then was trying to come up with what I could do. Like a Wagamama's thing was too expensive for me to put together, and I didn't have any real hospitality experience, so I was a little bit sort of had a bit of a thing in my head, but didn't know what to do with it. And that's when I met Josh.
Josh, yeah. So how did you come across Josh?
So one of the guys that I'd met as soon as I finished school, Tim Spry, him and I had moved out together, and Josh and I had a very parallel scenario where we both travelled at the same time. We both dropped out of marketing at the same time. We both, we had very parallel lives in that sense at the end there. And so he'd just come back from travelling as well and was super keen to do something. And Tim introduced us. And I was telling Josh about this idea that I had, and he was pretty excited about it too. And so we just started putting our heads together around how we could make something work. And so we decided that the most affordable thing to do was to find the smallest shop we could find on Chapel Street to make it as affordable as possible and try and jam everything we needed into that shop.
Having neither of you ever run a food business
Never
before?
run a food business before. Josh had worked a fair bit in hospitality while he was away, and when he got back to Melbourne, he was
he
in
knew
a couple
everything.
of cafes.
He's all over it.
He was super experienced.
So he's your partner now.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
a partner,
Exactly
yeah.
right.
So we've been partners for 27 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we've pretty much done everything together. It's been a remarkable partnership, not only from the point of view of the two of us, but just the fact that we've been able to work with our dads in the business who had a small share in the business.
Yeah, right.
And we kind of had our little board, I'd say, for a long time, where we had some good advice around us. We had some other people that took an interest and gave us some good advice. And
Good level heads.
yeah, that kept, because,
Say 23 you were when you started that. If you're
so
27 years.
22 I was so turning 23 that year. So.
Yeah, okay.
And with your dad having the entrepreneurial background, and then Josh's dad's more of a corporate, sort of been working out of the city, I know, for a long time. Like, you've got a lot of great experience to tap into, and your enthusiasm and passion for the product and the brand. It would have been...
That's right. It was just a good little mix of people that had come together. Dad always used to say to me that the day that they came down to have a look at the shop that we'd found, which was a tiny little sandwich shop in Chapel Street, we went for a walk down to a cafe down the road, and on the way down, Tim and Dad had basically said to each other, the boys, we put all our savings and everything into it as well, but they topped us up with 20 or 30,000 to help us get going, and they were both commenting that they weren't ever going to see that 20 or 30,000 again.
Behind the scenes.
But so they just
Good
met,
job, boys.
they just
Fucking
met
yeah.
through this as well, obviously.
They
So
just
it's
got thrown into it too.
It's like the in-laws coming together for
Yeah.
the first time.
Did they get on well?
Yeah, they got on well. Yeah, they were very different in a sense, but they got on well, and I think we all had a very common. We all built a very common sort of trust with each other and a respect the way we dealt with each other, and I think that's why the partnership worked out so well. And
So how did the shop go? Was there a "fuck, what have we done" moment, or did it go off pretty quickly?
No, it actually went crazy. I mean, we were pretty lucky. We did something a bit strange that at the beginning. So when we were building the shop, because we actually built the shop mainly ourselves. So my cousin did a lot of the furniture in our workshop at the farm, and we bought some secondhand equipment off a friend of mine whose family owned a equipment business that I went to Trinity with, and we did the plastering and we did the floors and did all that sort of stuff. It was only 25-30 square meters.
Yeah.
But one thing that we did do was because we were both really interested in brands, we wanted to do something quite catchy on the windows, and we were like before we were open. So
with your extensive marketing.
With extensive marketing.
Yeah.
So we decided, we convinced this girl to do a naked shot with holding a noodle box in front of her.
Class as well.
And
Oh, no.
so we actually put two big window things. It was on a corner. So we put two big window
Like
things,
decals
up on, blocked out the windows with the picture with no head, but a picture of a naked girl with a noodle box in front. And it caused the biggest stir in Chapel Street, Paran, South Yarra. Like,
That's gold.
people either loved it or hated it, but it got talked about, and
Yeah.
everyone was like wondering what the hell this shop was, because they'd seen the packaging before, but there was no food or anything there. It was like, and so really on the first day that we opened, we had a big queue waiting to come up, and after the council complaints and everything had happened.
We know a lot about marketing.
Oh,
But
my-
it
that's
it,
right.
it kicked off something and kicked off the conversation, and yeah, from there we opened up. We had Chapel Street Festival as well, which was pretty much around the time we opened, which gave us a big sort of boost, because at the time that was quite a big festival street festival in Melbourne, and we were in there with our Asian chef that we'd found out of the paper, Andy, who ended up working for us for about 15 years.
Wow.
And the three of us were in there, Josh and I'd take turns from not chopping our fingers off to one would do the till, I'd be chopping veggies and prepping meats and helping Andy do the thing, and and that's how we got started. And then we had a bunch of mates that came and worked for us, and but within about 12 months we decided we'd open another store in Ackland Street, St Kilda.
Mm-hmm.
So you made, how quickly till you get from zero to make profit? Pretty quick if you open your second store.
Yeah, well, this was the thing that we quite liked about food was, you purchase the product and you get paid for it that day, and so you sort of, and I guess one thing that worked in our advantage was we didn't have a cool room and space for all those sorts of things, so we were shopping for lunch service and dinner service, so our cost of goods were pretty tight, because we didn't have a lot of
Paran market, or
we didn't have a lot of room for error, so we sort of learned along that way. But God, when I look back, it was I think the ignorance is bliss, right? You just go for it.
It's a common thing. Isn't it? Yeah.
And so
And you have a crack.
and then you've opened a second store. Things are going all right.
Things are going well. Opened a second store. I was in the St Kilda one. Josh was in Chapel Street. And we were just finding that it was flowing well. We had a pretty simplistic operation. The Asian chefs that we had were just fantastic to work with. Incredible workers. Really supportive of us. Really liked the fact that they were, in an open kitchen, which was very rare for them to be. People watching their expertise, and people actually standing in the window watching them cooking, because I don't know, I mean, most people had gone to like a Chinese restaurant when they were younger, and you'd order something and 5 minutes later it'd come out and you'd be like, how did they do that so quickly? But it's amazing, the preparation time to then, coming in and watching your meal be cooked up in 2 minutes into this, with a bit of fire, and people loved watching it, and that was part of the theatre was part of what made Noodle Box at the beginning such a great thing. And the fact that we had a small shop, open kitchen, everyone could see absolutely everything happening, people were intrigued by it, and they liked it. Yeah.
So it was called Noodle Box from the start.
Always called Noodle Box, yeah.
And store number 2, any changes to store number 1?
No, it was a larger store. We had a bit more seating, and we had storage. We had cool rooms. We took a space upstairs in our Chapel Street store with a cool room, and started to understand, preparation and food storage, and creating new menus and trying different things.
You do menu, so you've got the Asian Andy that you said was did you have an input into the food? And by this stage, your passion, interest in food. But was he saying, "Look, just leave that to me, mate. I've got the food under control"?
It was kind of a mix of both. I think he looked at our first run and went, "Just leave it to me." But then we we just worked with him, and it was really, I think it was different for him as well, because we were like taking him to places and saying, what do you think of this food and what do you think of that food, and he was really enjoying the experimenting around as well. And so we started to think about things like efficiency, and thankfully we had some good people around us too, helping us with all that sort of stuff as well. And I think having a bit of a basic understanding of what it is to make a profit, and what it is to hire people, and how many people to hire, and I think building a team was something that came pretty naturally to Josh and I. We loved working with people, and really we just wanted it to be successful and have fun doing it too. That was the key for us.
And between the two of you, obviously similar backgrounds, and you've both been travelling and both all over marketing, but so what about when you were early days? Did you sort of lean to, I was more interested in managing, negotiating the leases, or managing the rent, or buying the food, or all of those things, or did you both do a bit of everything at the start?
We both did a bit of everything at the start, but I think after about 6 months, I started to sort of be more inclined to be into looking at building another shop, looking after the bookwork, and making sure the banking was done, and doing those sorts of things, setting the rosters and all that sort of side. And then Josh loved being in behind the counters, working customer service, having the music on, doing all those sorts of things.
Good combination.
And so we started to like different things in the business, which again, is a key factor to partnerships. I think a lot of people, when they get into partnerships, they both like the same thing, and it's great conversation at the beginning, and then when you get in there,
no one's doing the other part.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's looking at the balance sheet or the P&Ls.
Or you start butting heads on things too, and I think you've got to, I really trusted Josh in what he was doing, and he trusted me in what I was doing, and we kind of, always let each other run our race like that.
It's a long time for a partnership. You can talk to some of your partnerships, but to be in business in any relationship for that long, whether it's a marriage or a partnership, it's a long time.
It's a long time.
You've obviously had to manage things where business has gone well, business has not gone so well, and stuff. But before we get back to the businesses stuff, but just the relationship side of things, like how do you, that's evolved a lot, I imagine, over the years. And
massively. I mean, it's interesting. We took our families away last year on our first family holiday with our kids, Josh and Helen, and Ash and I with the kids, and we've just got a great friendship. We don't hang out all the time together, but we seem to always do the bigger things together. And it's.
And how do the kids go? Because the other challenge, the next challenge, is how the kids go. When you put them all in that throws the dynamic out.
That could be interesting. Well, after the family holiday, I don't think we'd like to go down that path, but no, we were pretty exhausted after that. But it'll be interesting to see how long we all stay together for.
The generational side of things, but and so I'm going to move away from the noodles for a minute, because I've got a lot of questions around Noodle Box and the business, but just. You did start to get into other businesses as well? Yeah,
so before because we had no idea about franchising. We hadn't even thought about franchising. I think apart from like the big sort of 4 or 5 brands in franchising as far as we were concerned, like the McDonald's and KFC and, Hungry Jack, all of that, that's what we thought franchising was about. And so we had about 4 or 5 noodle boxes at the time, and then we decided that we wanted to be... we were very keen on hospitality side, so we decided that we'd buy the Station Hotel in Greville Street with Pete and George, who had Cafe Sienna in Chapel Street, and which was just down the road from us at Noodle Box, and so we brought
more business partners.
and that all went really well too. Again, we all had a little bit of a different niche in there. And we ran that for we only had that for about 18 months, 2 years, and we sold that out to Lion Nathan, and that was kind of a bit of a kicker for us. You know, we did reasonably well out of that. That gave us a little bit of a kicker, and then we decided, okay, let's build some more Noodle Box stores, and we still hadn't got into franchising yet at that point, but all
the stores under management at that point.
Yeah, all the stores were under management, and we got up to, I think it was 11 stores, I think, on our own. And then we started to get people coming to us about franchising, and we had people asking after about 3 or 4, but then we had people that were in franchising coming to us saying, you guys should franchise this, and franchise developments back in the day.
Did you work with, so they came to you and said, you know, do you want to so they helped you set the whole system up, or did you do a bit of research into, you know, in franchising generally? Like, yeah,
I mean, we did as much research as we could, but we were really being led by those guys in a sense, and we were getting pretty exhausted running 11, 12 outlets. You know, if someone can't turn up or someone's not there, you know, it's becoming a 7-day job for us.
Are they all
the
still
time.
In Melbourne at that point, or had you
all still in Melbourne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've pretty much, which is advice that we often talk to about emerging franchisors about. They go, oh yeah, I'm going to put one in Sydney, one in Melbourne, and one in, and you're like, oh God.
Someone in Singapore just approached us.
Even though you, by the sounds of it, it wasn't necessarily the strategy, but it sounds like it was a great result to have them all, you know, fairly close.
Yeah, and we wanted to hit the main streets too, the strips that would give us the most exposure. So that was, you know, Chapel Street, Ackland Street, Glenferrie Road. You know, they were the sort, Puckle Street, Mooney Ponds. They were the sort of hits for us.
No shopping centres, all in strip shops.
All in strip shops. Yeah, and we've maintained that the whole way. Actually, we're not in any big major centres really. We're probably we did 10 years at Chadstone externally, and we're in some sort of smaller size shopping centres, external facing sort of stuff in Queensland, because there's a lot of that. Works very well up there from that point of view, but we're not in the big centres. Yeah.
What did you do when you paid your dad back? Did you wrap it up in a nice bow and say, fuck you very much?
Well, we kept wanting to grow, so
so you never paid it back.
I mean, it was, you know, the funding side for us. I think one thing that was great with Josh too was we really just put our heads down and put everything back into the business that we could. You know, we agreed on what we would take to be able. We used to work out what we'd need to live each year, and we'd kind of pay ourselves that, and that's what we'd stick to, and everything else we'd just keep putting in. And that, you know, now looking back, because we still had a great time, it didn't make any difference really to us, was such a great thing to do. Not only from the fact that it enabled us financially to grow and to follow the pattern that we did, but it set a little bit of a mantra really for how we were right up until now, really, around how we are with the business and how we look at the business. You know, we focus more on it being successful and the strategy being successful than the money side, which
it's a byproduct, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think, you know, following that sort of for a long period of time it's been a really wonderful thing to follow, I think.
Having a cash business with 11 stores must have been very difficult. Where to hide that said cash?
Yeah.
So you're probably still finding books with cash.
With
no comment.
With
what you're asking.
No, but with people like Tim on the board, it was always about discipline of doing the right thing. You know, to be like we're always taught with the business that we wanted to run it as if it was a bit bigger than it was, you know, in a sense. And I think they were trying to guide us in that direction, because if we didn't have that experience, it would have been a different ball game, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Particularly at that age, because you're still very young. So you would have been 25, 6 around then.
When you started franchising, a little bit later, wasn't it? Or?
It was a bit later, in 2003. But I mean, we had the pub when we were 25, 26, you know, so... and then we had a club called Saratoga as well that we did, that we had for a couple of years as well.
It's a lot of moving parts, isn't it?
A lot of moving parts, but we had a great team of people around us. We had a little sort of head office in Paran, just in Greville Street, and we had people coming in to have chats about Noodle Box, and staff coming in about the pub and the club. We just had a nice little environment going on. It was good. It's good times. Yeah.
And so then got out all the hospo and the nightclubs and put all the chips into Noodle Box, and down the franchising path. So how did you go about your first franchisee, recruiting your first franchisee, and you and Josh in the interview, and how did that all go? Yeah,
it was it was interesting because we were young too, and I think people looking at you, you get into a franchise for experience and knowledge, etc. But I think the depth of people we had around us too really did help with that. Our first franchise partner was signed in 2003, and his name was Antonio Van. He's just celebrated his 21st year with us this year. So he's been in with us. He's watched us grow. We've watched him grow. But yeah, he's been in the system the whole time. He's now on his 4th or 5th store. He's bought and sold and
had multiple at the same time.
He's got 3 at the moment. Yeah, all very successful stores.
Did you put him into one of the 11, or did you put him into a greenfield?
We put him into one of the 11. So Bay Street, Port Melbourne was our first franchise, and we'd been operating that store for probably 4 or 5 months. It was relatively new, and that was our aim, was to get someone into the new looking store, a franchise partner, something that was already operational, could see the numbers.
Did you keep many of them? Have you got many company stores now? Or are they all franchised?
We don't. So we developed the business building both corporate stores and franchise stores. Franchise stores outnumbered corporate stores in the growth trajectory. So we ended up roughly about sort of 25% corporate, 75%. Sometimes we went up to 60-40, it was always less. And it was in 2015 that we decided that we wanted to be 100% franchised, and we had our first CEO come on board and take over from really Josh and I running the company.
Which is an interesting thing, time in the journey of the business as well, where we're bringing in someone externally. So that was a big move, and
letting the reins go, something I thought I would have struggled with a little bit more than I did, but again, having incredibly smart people come in that know about specific things in business that clearly we didn't have the depth in. That was such a great experience too, getting people in and around us, and that was a pretty quick light bulb moment for us, but for both Josh and I, and everyone that was involved in the business. Seeing smarter people coming in, sharing their knowledge. I mean, that's when I had that thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to start absorbing this. I was super excited, and it's what I wanted. It's really
How many did you have? Did you say when at 2015 when he came in?
We had about 80 locations at that point.
Oh, so you rode it a long way through.
Yeah. We got up to about 80 locations, and we just had the one brand at that stage too.
Right. Yeah, and that's the acquisition. So now it's been organic growth and opening stores and franchise stores, and so then you did your first acquisition. Yeah, so
Ian, our CEO, in 2015, we did an acquisition of Walk in a Box in 2017. Testing me there, but I think 2017. And they had basically almost replicated our interior sort of design. But copied. But they had obviously changed their branding was different and so on. Menus were relatively similar, but and so they had a good footprint in South Australia, which is where they originated from, and then they had a decent footprint over in WA, and we didn't have much going on in WA at all. I think we had 2 locations, and then
How many stores?
they had 34.
Okay.
And so we ended up buying them. Yeah, we took them out completely.
100%.
Yeah,
okay.
100%. And we ran both those brands parallel. So we had Noodle Box in South Australia as well as Wok in a Box, and Wok in a Box over in WA.
And kept doing that for a while.
We did that for basically 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, we ran it like that. And now, just recently, we've converted them all over to Noodle Box.
So how many Noodle Box stores are there now?
There is 108
Okay. Cool.
now. Yeah, 108. Yeah.
Good on you.
And the category changed. So now, out of noodles into burgers.
Out of noodles into burgers.
What brought about the change of still in food, but going down a different path?
So when our Ian was with us for a couple of years, then we decided we wanted to have a bit of a change, and we ended up hiring Grant Lee, who has been remarkable for us because he really slotted into what we sort of had built as a bit of an ethos between the families and work ethic, etc. And the way we thought about the business, he really slotted in perfectly into that. And when Grant came on board, he challenged us on where the market was in QSR, so what the market share that was available for Asian food versus being in pizza or burgers or chicken or whatever. So we started to think about that, and that's when we started our Paddy Smith's journey, which was our burger brand.
So you designed them from the start?
From the start, we built that from scratch. We brought a business called Double Six, which was they had two shops, but we just really liked their burgers, and so we brought their 2 stores. One was in Flemington, one was in Templestowe, and we bought them out completely. And then when we redesigned that concept, the owner of that actually wanted to be a franchise partner of ours, so he ended up coming back in as a franchise partner. And yeah, we've built that up. I think in our burger division now we've got 42 locations, so that's been built up.
Is that with the other included? Yeah.
Yeah. So along that journey, late last year, we acquired Huckster Burger, and they have 7 locations. So so we've got Paddy Smith's and Huckster Burger in the burger side.
So running 3. We're going to get to virtual brands and stuff in a minute, but so running 3 businesses, is there plans to pick other categories within food as well, or is it stick to burgers and noodles at the moment?
Well, we've got burgers, noodles, and chicken. So Southern Soul is our front-facing chicken brand, and we've got 2 locations there. That's a fresh brand that we've started ourselves, and that sort of came about because of our virtual brand business. So
was virtual brand a result of what happened in COVID, or were you already down the path? Because it just hearing a little bit about it from your in-house legal counsel, about on the journey through COVID, because she was in a group that I was involved with during COVID, so we're having those Zoom calls when we're all locked down. It sounded amazing, like how quickly you've sort of got that up and running, but I wasn't sure if there was a lot of planning that happened and just COVID hit.
So for the core business for Noodle Box, really, we started to invest in franchising before COVID hit. So we kind of, we were looking at either building more destination sit-down restaurants and taking that angle, or building more express-style restaurants that would rely a lot more on tech and delivery side. And so we chose that path. And we knew that and we knew that we were kind of competing against some players that were spending huge amounts on fit outs, etc., to have that more sit down experience. But we kind of felt that the QSR market for us was more about grab and go, or come in and have a quick meal, leave, or have it delivered for convenience at home, and we kind of favoured the convenience side. And so we were we were a fair way down the path of executing that, working with the aggregators of, Uber and DoorDash, etc. And then obviously COVID hit, and everyone's worlds were turned upside down. And I remember the first 3 weeks of COVID when it first came, and we got into lockdown, and we had to have a meeting. And Josh and I were just like, we were thinking, we've been in this for 23 years.
We're done.
24 years, and now this is going to knock us out. And the team, we had such a great team at the time too, and it was just it was a really, really bad. I mean, it was bad for everyone, right? Everyone was probably having the same conversations. But
I was.
But it turned around for food, and I think we were in a decent position. We had a team that loved change. It's part of the prerequisite working at Concept 8 is that you love change. You love the speed of how we progress things and come up with things and so on. It's part of the culture in the company. So Grant proposed a thing called virtual brands to us, and wanted to try a menu first of all in fried chicken to sit behind our Noodle Box business, and that's how it happened.
So your virtual chicken business started before your front facing.
It did.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
And how many virtual brands have you got now?
We've got there's basically 6. But we've got a couple of plant-based ones in there as well that are just really extensions of menus.
And they're just delivery only, aren't they?
They are delivery only, but funnily enough, over the last 6 months, we've started to do some dual front-facing counter stuff as well, which has worked quite well too.
Okay.
So, you'll find at a Patty Smith's, for instance, they'll have a Dante's hot chicken counter as well, so you'll be able to order both in store. But predominantly it's delivery based. Yeah.
And what's next?
We're just I think at the moment we feel like we've got a good stable of brands there, and there's plenty of growth to come. I think in those brands, there's still plenty of runway. Yeah, I mean, as you know, there's I think yours was up around 300 and something when you sold. I mean, it's Australia is a big market. I think people forget. They get quite anxious. Oh, we've got to go overseas. We've got to do something. But to build something at 300 plus locations, it's a big business and substantial market where you can keep things really tight and controlled.
And are you still strip focused?
We're still strip focused, although we like the external facing shopping centre model as well, where they trade through the night.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's had a lot of success up in the Queensland market because that model works very well.
Yep.
But we find in our business, the majority of our business is nighttime. In any store, I think the best would be 60-40. Some of them are 80-20, lunch and dinner. Dinner being predominant. So for us, internal shopping centre just really isn't our strength.
So a lot of people are working from home. They are used to being in the city and getting good quality food generally.
Yeah.
Now they're around their local suburbs. The food needs to come up in quality. And the offer needs to improve in quality because there's a demand for it more.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? And is that happening, or am I?
No, I do agree with that. I think from our point of view, we're not seeing an increase in delivery over lunchtime because of workers working from home.
Yeah.
It's not something that's sticking out to us. It might be for more of a lunch offer, possibly, or in certain areas. We're not seeing that as a significant change. Right. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So business, so all gone well. We're going to end with tips and for franchisors. But what about? Sounds like it's gone really well all the time, and I know that there has been challenges along the way. There's been franchise.
Luckily, you skipped into some other areas.
Good bits. We'll just loop back. There was, you picked the wrong franchise partners. You picked the wrong locations. You've done all. I know all those things have happened for every business, but I know some of the times where the franchise partners, like that relationship broke down and things went pear-shaped. So were they some of the biggest challenges, or where did things, where'd you go, I'm in the wrong business here, this is giving me the shits, I want to get out?
I think the selection of franchise partners is so important, not just for our business, but for the franchise partner as well. And I think sometimes it's like now that we've got information and data around whether or not they're suitable for our business or whether we're suitable for them as well, makes it it's been a big game changer.
You
for
like
us.
the Zoracle profiling tool that you did?
Go.
Yeah,
A quick little plug.
It is pretty cool though, isn't it?
It is cool. It is cool.
There's a lot of logic to it.
And I think it's so much better when you have a franchise partner on from both sides of the business, to have someone in there who's 100% suitable. You know that they're going to be great at what they do, enjoy what they do, and want to be a part of it. It's important. And I think when you're growing, initially, you get so concerned about meeting that criteria of a break even in a business where you're investing in franchising. You need to get a certain amount of stores up, and I think that level. I'm not sure if you've heard it before, but we find it quite common when we talk to other brands, is that sort of 20 to 50. It's a real danger zone. For lots of brands, because you've got a franchisor that's trying to grow, bringing people into the system, and an expectation from a franchisee of the types of support that you have to give, and the level of that. It sometimes finds it very hard to meet.
to have that infrastructure in your head office.
And it's usually where, this is what I've found, that's the point where the franchisor has to release the reins, like you were saying to Grant or to Ian, I think you said. You went past that probably because there was two of you, but a lot of people, they need to say, okay, all right, now I need a marketing person, now I need the ops person and whatever, and they're just, they tend to employ people that are like them, which is not what you want.
No.
And they're uncomfortable to employ people that are smarter or experienced than them.
Yeah.
For like exactly as you were saying. The
Yeah.
objective is to surround yourself with better people.
That's
than
right.
yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't do that well.
Yeah. 100%.
That's that tipping point.
That's right.
But I think you mentioned it with your first franchisee, and I know lots of people, the dirty dozen, the first 12, there's often lots of stories of the first ones that people have just recruited them as franchise partners because they wanted to grow the store numbers, and then and they haven't been as successful. But I think your story, that the people are still in the network, and there's others as well that I know that have been in the network for a long, long time. We had Matthew from the FCA here, and he loved those stories because that's what it's about. That's why the franchise model's been successful for so many people. It's not. It's been successful for you and Josh, and that's great. But but the people that probably weren't thinking of being in business or wouldn't have had the capability to do it without the support that you've given. So
I think we've got probably, it'll be close to 15% of our network would have been with us for over 10 years. Probably, some of them have 14, 15 years. So, and some of them are from the early days as well. Obviously, from when we were early franchising. So we were pretty lucky too, in some sense. We could have gone. You can really see how it can go wrong for good businesses quite quickly.
Lots of multi-owners?
We've got a few multis, but nothing over sort of 2 or 3 locations. We've got people like Antonio that will have 2 or 3, but have sold 2 or 3 as well. So they're sort of moving through the network, picking up a store, building it up again, or seeing a great location, they'll grab that one, and it'd be more convenient to sell that one and keep that one. So we've got a bit of that goes on in the network.
Any multi-brand that have got the burgers and the noodles?
Yeah, we've got a couple in there.
Cool.
Yeah, we've got a couple of those operators. Yeah, and they tend to be ones that already have a couple of stores. They'll pick up another brand as well.
It was interesting. Just quickly, as we were talking to Matthew before we did his podcast, but I was saying to him that our best franchisee we ever had was a cop.
Right.
And he was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And you would it's quite surprising.
Why do you think that is a?
He just did. He just followed the system.
Right.
And he was a personable sort of guy, and the people weren't shooting at him because so he was probably happy.
Yeah.
As well, because that happened to him a couple of times. And our worst franchisee was an ex-Donut King, husband and wife franchisee that were guns at Donut King. They were the best.
Yeah.
But they came into Michelle's and they thought they could improve it and change it, and we're just like, just do the system. Yeah. And sure enough, they're starting to do that. So
it's interesting. It only takes, sort of a 10 or 15% change in the type of person that they are, or where their expectation is, or to be a tipping point.
That was a real when Dave was originally talking about Zoracle and that stage of growth?
Yeah. That, the entrepreneurial compared to plug and play. Yeah
exactly. And that sort of really made a lot of sense to me after seeing that, because they should have been at the start, the ex-Donut King people, because they were entrepreneurial. So anyhow,
and well, the other thing is, young family into your journey and had a bit of, enjoyed life, gone out a lot now, such into health and fitness and, well-being and all that sort of stuff, mixing it all up. So you're getting the right balance between family and health and personal.
I mean, I've had kids a little bit later in life, I guess. My kids are only 6 and 3. But, have been able to spend a fair bit of time with them, and I feel like I've got the work-life balance quite good, and that's really coming from the team we've got and Grant's leadership in there. I mean, it's.
Does he throw you out of the office?
It's a fantastic. I don't know what he thinks, but he's very nice. But
he goes, oh shit, Dave and Josh are here again.
I mean, strangely enough, he's super inclusive, and which is quite rare for a CEO, I think, with founders around. He really embraces us coming in and doing stuff, and some of our team too. Like we've got most of the team in the exec team. Most of the guys have been with us for over 6 years, so we have a pretty good retention. People seem to hang around. They like it, we've got Josh and I have got relationships. Tanya, one of the girls in the office, she's been with Josh and I for I think almost 13, 14 years or something. So we've got some long relationships in there, and Grant's been fantastic in how he manages that too. So
But you've obviously created that environment. So
culture's in.
It's a credit to you as well as it is to him.
Yeah, and I guess again, how partnerships reflect on teams too. And again, just so thankful for that partnership I've got with Josh and Tim and Larissa and now Ben's jumping on the board, Ben James. So
Josh's brother, it's great, and that obviously relationships are such an important part of franchising. It's you've got the relationship at the top, at the headquarters, long-standing people right through. So, and that's for a franchisee to come into that brand to see. That people have been in the business for a long time, and they understand, but also you've been focused on the franchisee success all the way through, so which has been great. We're going to finish up, but last question. So put yourself back as an emerging franchisor. What sort of tips would you have liked to have? You were lucky to have support, but what sort of tips can you have for other emerging franchisors on this journey?
Well, I think number one is you've got to support the success of the franchisee, and the franchise partner is the business in a sense. They're representing the business, they're representing the brand, etc. So first and foremost, they're at the forefront of everything, and I think it's our mantra in the office. Is to enable the dreams and aspirations of franchise partners. That's in our office. Everyone knows that in our office. Really the team, like the people that are working for you, or coming in, spending their hours of their day away from their families, doing stuff for for us, as well. Yes, they're being rewarded through wages and bonuses, whatever it is, but they're still giving up their time and their expertise. So that's something Josh and I have always really cherished in the business, which I think is super important. And then obviously from our point of view, our partnership relationship and how that reflects on the company and how we hold ourselves and what sort of expectations we have as a company as well, and how we operate is super important. But I think too, like, it's about sort of, I think, setting the strategy, setting what it is that you want to achieve, making sure that everyone in the organisation understands what that is, and bring everyone along on the journey with you. Because if you want to run the business up here and isolate, as being a boss, I just don't think that works. And especially in a franchise environment too, because you've just got so many different people that are invested emotionally in the business as well. Not only the team, but each of the franchise partners, etc. And I think, to keep that all humming and keep everyone aligned, you have to bring everyone along on the journey and be very, very clear. So that resonates all the way from the top, all the way down, throughout the network as to what, we're very open about what our plans are, what our strategy is with the group, how we're performing, within our teams. Very open on board meetings, sharing financial information, how all of that stuff is just critical.
Well, we started talking, and you were talking about family and community, and it sort of flowed right through. So, congratulations on all you've done, mate. It's a fantastic story, and thanks for spending some time with us today.
So we do an X-rated version of this podcast, which will be starting.
That's the next half an hour.
The Jimmy Barnes tour is where that will start. Thanks, mate. Congratulations.
Thanks for having us on.
Fantastic
Cheers.
story.
Great.
Really
good luck with the rest of the podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers.
We need it.